Okay, hey everybody, it's your co-hosts here, Michael Harris and Joel Sadler, and we
Yo,
are on the Hero's Journey podcast. Remember, you are the hero of your journey.
that's it. I like that. That sounds
Oh,
good.
can't get too cheesy on it, eh? But yeah,
That's
no,
not
it's
cheesy, man.
it's
That's the
important.
essence of the whole thing
Yeah,
for everyone.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's right. Hey, we're on our own individual journey, whether you're
yeah,
man, woman, child,
totally.
alien, whatever. Yeah, yeah,
Or identify as a they, them,
yep,
whatever.
that's right. Me. Hey, Mike, so today we're going to talk about choosing your pain, which is quite an
Choose
interesting
your
topic.
pain. Yeah,
And it's something that's close to both of our hearts because the part I like about it is that it's empowering because it brings a decision into the mix. So let's kick off with a bit of a example where you know that you have about choosing pain. Have you got one that comes to mind? If you don't, I've got a couple there, but do you
well,
want
let's set the foundation
to?
first of what that actually means. Choose your pain.
Mm,
So, we as a species are wired to avoid pain and seek pleasure.
yeah,
It's a response, right, to keep us safe. So we naturally are going to gravitate to a situation that we're going to feel safer by than we are by putting ourselves into pain, challenge, danger. And
yeah.
so when you think of challenge or you think of pain, it's like quite counterintuitive to go lean into that for a lot of people. But that is, for a start, where the growth comes from. It's through the
Mm,
challenge or through the
mm,
pain. It
mm.
doesn't come totally from support. It comes from a balance of both.
Yeah.
Um, and if we look at it, the key here is that you can't avoid the challenge. You can't avoid pain. So
Mm.
choose it.
Choose the pain. Yeah.
Choose your pain.
Yeah.
Choose your challenge
Yeah.
because it's unavoidable. The universe is set up that we
Mm.
have both support and challenge.
Yeah.
And so we have to choose it. And so you can either consciously choose it or you unconsciously choose it and you just kind
Yes.
of fall into it. And this is what happens to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And if we look at this, there's many different ways of kind of looking at this whole piece. But um, for example, I had a client not so long ago who was choosing to watch porn.
Mm-hmm.
So when things would get messy between him and his wife, or like a bit awkward, they would choose to go watch porn as a way to kind of relieve themselves
Yeah.
and to relieve themselves, but also to get a fix, to
Yeah.
feel like they had some control, and it
Mm.
meant that they
Mm.
could avoid having to deal with the conflict with the wife, deal
Mm.
with those issues.
Mm.
And so in that moment, if they're choosing porn, what they're
Mm.
doing is they're avoiding the pain of having
Mm-hmm.
to confront the conflict, deal with some uncomfortable stuff,
Yeah.
have to maybe own some of their own pieces inside that conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, that was the part they were avoiding to go seek the pleasure of the porn. But then what they've done inadvertently, probably without realizing it in the moment, although I knew they didn't realize it at
Mm.
the
Mm.
time,
Mm.
is they are then causing or creating the pain of having further disconnect from their wife
Yeah.
and then building a habit
Yeah.
of going there
Yeah.
when things get rough, which causes a further disconnect, less communication, and more friction in their
Yeah.
relationship.
Yeah.
So they were unaware of that at that time. And then when it became
Yeah.
aware of them, they're like, oh shit, okay.
Yeah. It's that awareness piece. Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
awareness because often we have it's a blind spot. We don't actually have the awareness of the
Yeah.
full piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
So that's one really good example, real life example of situation.
So to be clear, just to make the distinction between, because there's quite a bit wrapped up in that piece there. So
Yeah.
what you're saying is, one of the pain choices could have been sitting down having a difficult, confronting discussion with his partner, potentially around whatever he's avoiding in that is
Mm-hmm.
one painful experience.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so he avoided that and went and had some pleasure. But
Yeah.
the result of the second painful experience of that is that it disrupted relationship. So he was choosing that second one, like a less intimate relationship, because not dealing with the situation then and there, it's dragging out, right?
Yeah.
So in a sense, in New Zealand we have the saying of nipping it in the bud by being aware and actually dealing with it. If we're humans, we can't always deal with it right here and now all the time because some
But no.
stuff is confronting as stuck, and like it's just too hard at the time. But the awareness brings at least that realization that actually, hang on a minute, if I don't have the balls and or make an effort to work on that now, it's going to roll through. And I think, you and I have talked about, and we've been in, different relationships over the years. I look back and go, I think that's was playing out in my life and has been playing out and still plays out now. But at least I'm aware now when something comes up, I can, not always, but yeah, decide to actually, well, if I don't deal with it now, it can fester away and grow into something a lot bigger, and actually potentially not necessarily end the relationship, but be part of the relationship ending,
Yeah, like whatever you're investing energy into is going to grow. Whatever you're not, it's not. So if you're, and you're right about, you talked about awareness. Awareness is the key, 100%. And, we're all human. Like we all have blind spots, me included. There's shit I don't see about myself either, that's part of the human experience. And it doesn't matter how much knowledge you gather and gain, there's still going to be blind spots. You're still going to have them. And so that definitely is part of it. And sometimes it requires someone on the outside to shine the light in to help you see the blind spots and things you can't see.
Yeah.
But if you're in a situation, here's one way of looking at this. If you're in a situation where you're avoiding something, this is a really good way to anchor or associate this to a situation where you're when internally you're avoiding something.
Yeah.
Just to ask yourself, okay, what am I avoiding right now? What's the pain I'm avoiding? And then if I go and avoid this now, what is the pain I'm creating in the future?
Yeah.
Because there's going to be something. And that's a really good question to ask yourself.
Hell yeah. And I think like it builds, like I'd bring it to a friendship level. Like I've got some good friends, and one in particular who I'm actually catching up with today has been through some tricky times over the years in his business. And there was a term that was coined that floats around about courageous conversations. And what does it mean to have a courageous conversation? And obviously in a business or corporate sense, it's obviously, as part of the role, particularly with staff and team, having that conversation, because stuff can fester away and can damage culture and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. And it's someone's responsibility or leader's responsibility to actually have the courageous conversation with that person or group and go, hey, either that's not on, or how do we change the behavior, or what do we need to do differently? Because sometimes it's the company's issue, not the employee's issue. But I think the point there is that him and I have started bouncing that out between our relationship about our ability to have courageous conversation with each other. And particularly over the last couple of years, it's really aided us in our friendship because we were in business together. We've been friends for years, and many things have popped up which had the ability, potential to scuttle the relationship easily, you know what I mean? But we managed to have courageous conversations with each other, just open, honest conversations, and move through that stuff, So I think it, in choosing the pain in that point was choosing that sometimes awkward conversation, other than just letting it fester away and drifting apart or for whatever, you know what I mean? That's
and what you've just talked about there, I mean, I've heard the term courageous conversations a number of times over the years, and it's a great term, and it's a good framework. And what you've just talked about is literally creating a framework or an infrastructure in a relationship or dynamic where you both agree on that situation. You can do this in like you said, a friendship, a business partnership, a romantic relationship. But where you both create boundaries and framework about how you both want to operate, and you both buy into that. And then if you both buy into it and agree to it, you can then gently hold each other accountable and bring it back to that place where you can then have those conversations, knowing that it's going to be not always received openly, because when something's confronting, right? Our natural response, again, if you look at this, when confronted with something that we perceive as a threat, is to avoid it, deflect it. Like a lot of people do, they'll point the finger back or they'll arc up. And that's just a natural response where they're reacting instead of choosing to react. And that's definitely a muscle you can build over time as well. But so even though that response may come up, if you both agreed to it, and you're both mature about it and both committed to achieving good outcomes, then you can really get in there and make a big difference with those conversations, for sure.
Heck yeah. And I think it, for me, it, I imagine some people have come across landmark education, and you and I have obviously gone through that, over the years or many years ago, and was very powerful at the time. And, one of the concepts they talk about is creating a clearing, which is kind of like, I like to kind of say, creating a space to be, open and honest in. And I find, when we use that sort of term, courageous conversation, it basically gives us the ability to be vulnerable and honest.
Yeah.
So I know neither of us has turned up to that space to have a conversation with an agenda, a nefarious agenda, or a negative agenda. It's always about, hey, I value you, I love you, I want to keep the friendship, keep the relationship, but I've got the stuff I need to talk about. So you can just feel that, you don't feel discomfort or incongruency between what's being said and the action. You know what I mean? So it creates a really powerful space, because and other times, for example, with my partner, I might be feeling, say, angry or triggered about something, but then I try and sugarcoat it with my words. And it doesn't work at all. The energy. Yeah. So
you can't bullshit the intent and the energy behind what's been done.
100%.
We're energetic beings, and the energy is picked up on prior to anything else that's said. So when you strip it back like that, it's like, yeah, right. And then it feels even worse for you and for them, because like you said, there's a bullshit layer sitting over. So
that for me created a space where the bullshit was gone, and you can, and it's quite, not, I would say quite rare, but for me it was quite a cool experience, and I think more and more that's happening. I mean, that's the whole point of this podcast.
I was just going to say that exactly, man. It's like, if we can, part of the intention of exactly what you just said, where we've started this, is to create authentic conversations and to empower men and women, and have people kind of be responsible, like be really accountable and responsible for themselves and for their outcomes. And the more we create these types of conversations and create a space of authenticity and vulnerability, it then creates an opening and offering for others to come into that space. And so you imagine if you have a whole community of people that are really radically taking responsibility for their outcomes in their relationships, their business, everywhere, where they're looking for win-win situations, where they're taking responsibility for what they're manifesting and for their triggers, instead of pointing the finger and blaming. Like, you've then got a really a majorly transformed community, which is 100%. Pretty inspiring. So, and I firmly believe, as consciousness is shifting now, and we've kind of touched on this, but some of these old structures and systems are starting to go, this old veil. There's going to be way more conversations like this, and way more healing modalities around the psychosomatic aspects, energetics. There's what they called alternative healing. All the stuff's kind of coming back online. So
100%. Half the time that alternative healing stuff has been here for thousands of years.
That's exactly,
and it's actually it's a historical foundation.
That's exactly why I used
alternatives.
It's like, like Chinese medicine. Let's say one of the classes, alternatives, been around for thousands of years, and works and actually does things to the body that helps chronic stuff. Whereas, I mean, this is a big conversation too. We look at allopathic medicine, the Western medicine, a pill for every ill, and it's just what is that doing? Cool. So, but anyway,
about the dollar.
100% about the dollar. But on that, just, I know you wanted to cover this part too. I know this is what you brought up, the realization that you had around you weren't empowered, say, for example, with your kids' health so much. It was more something that you were relying on an external entity or an external person, in which case would be the doctor or the medical system, and then you're at the mercy of that system, because you're not empowered in that particular area. And again, this is not wrong or right. Like,
no, but it's like, I think for me, part of the hero's journey, and I just come back to our logo, of that warrior walking along and then being confronted in the mirror. Part of my personal journey that's really confronted me is how disempowered I've been in so many areas of my life. Yeah. And then I think, holy moly, like, I am a reflection also of our society. How did we get to a place where I could rattle off 10 different areas of my life that were disempowered, where I am relying on a third party for electricity, water, gas,
Yeah.
medical,
Yeah. When you look at it
banking.
like
Like
that.
it's just outrageous. Like what, like, and I'm not being like trying to be uh um too over the top here, but what if society did fold? Or, there's so much crazy stuff going on at the moment in the world. What happens
Mhm.
if the power did just go out or the banking system did just close down? Like, what do I do? You know what I mean? So that's
Mhm.
been part of my, and I know you've got preppers and all these kind of people and all that, but for me, I've got a bloody container or an underground bunker or whatever. But I've been confronted by that and kind of gone, okay, well, what would I do? What could I do? And the real practical example is just with my kids' health. So I've started digging into homeopathy and understanding how it works, how it learns, how it can be applied. I've got a book, I've got a kit, and it really works. It
Yeah.
really works. I've been using it with my kids, and like for example, my little boy had a fever the other day, and I treated him within 15 minutes. It was gone. His temperature was gone. So
Yeah.
instead of
Boom.
like a paracetamol or Pamol or whatever it is, which is a petroleum, I think, based product, which kind of basically numbs the pain, drops the temperature down,
Mm.
which is fine because that works.
Yeah,
But
it's
this
like
is,
as treating the symptoms or the issue, like in the sense of the symptom.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Where the homeopathy goes in and actually theory is that the body heals itself from within. And I think it's a bit of a trigger to kind of reset, in a sense, how I understand it. And it works back through and helps the body to kind of, I'm not an expert in that space, but for example, and so that's an example of what I've been confronted with. And I think it's actually quite a fun journey because it's very different. But now I kind of go, well, I don't have time to do everything, but if I
Yeah.
just chip away, for example, in that space, and
Hmm.
become slightly more empowered, then I can teach that to my kids. And then I think it's like a snowball rolling down a hill. If I practice that with my kids, teach them how to do it, and then with their kids, it's just the momentum just grows and it goes through the generations. And then now my grandchildren and my kids will have a skill that they might not ever have been taught. They might choose to not use it or not, but at least there's opportunity there for them to pick it up and be empowered in that space.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah. You're
exploring.
creating a new pattern for your legacy,
Yeah,
a new empowered tool that your family lineage will have, essentially, right?
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
And if
part.
we look at that in the
Mm,
context of the choose your pain,
yeah.
this particular one, right? Because this is kind of where it'll come to. I mean, you're right about the electricity and everything else. And
Mm,
you say, how do we end up here? Well, we've been slowly pushed in this direction by design, because if whoever controls the power, controls the water, controls the food, controls the monetary and situation and the information, well, you've got full control over a society. And if you're a
mm,
ruler of an empire, you
mm,
want control over the society, right? Because then you have the
mm,
leverage.
mm, mm,
And so if we look at kind of the state we're in on a macro perspective, if we just zoom out now and look at it from that,
mm,
we've given up so many of our,
mm,
so much of our power because it's been easy. Remember, it's easy. So
mm,
we've lent into seeking pleasure,
mm.
avoiding pain. Oh, we'll
Yeah.
provide this for you. We'll do this for you. We'll put this infrastructure in place. You don't have to worry about
Mm,
doing that
mm,
yourself.
mm.
So it's like easy, right? And again, not wrong or
Oh, yeah.
right, just
Push a
what's happened
button.
over time. Yeah, push a button to do
Yeah.
this and do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in doing so comes the flip side. There's always a flip side.
Mm,
There's always
mm,
two
mm.
sides to every coin, the
Yeah.
positive and negative, the black and the white. And
Mm,
so in doing that, if whoever controls the power company or this or that chooses to turn it off, then
mm,
you're at the mercy of them. And
mm.
that's the pain at that point because you haven't become self-sufficient.
Interesting. Yeah. Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Of course.
again,
Yeah.
and again,
Yeah.
this is not a judgment. And of course, I'm
Mm,
also
mm,
reliant on many of these systems, right? So
mm,
this is,
mm,
I'm not saying I'm not part of all this. I am too.
mm.
Um, and it's a matter of them picking and choosing how radical you choose to be in
Mm.
taking full responsibility and
Yeah.
governance over all different
Yeah.
areas of your life. And we're all going to
Yeah.
navigate to certain areas over others based on our value systems, like what's important
Oh.
to us and what we believe.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is. It's choose your pain. Choose the areas
Yeah.
that you want
It,
to be empowered in that are important to you to
mm.
avoid the other side of it, the other
Heck
pain.
yeah. It puts in like, like I've gone through that whole journey of thinking about that. And one of the outcomes was possibly moving to the West Coast, which is, for those that don't know, the West Coast of New Zealand's kind of quite maybe wild for this, like
More
the
rugged,
wild coast, rugged, not a lot of, there's infrastructure, but it's sort of small town sort of style, and that's one way is to go bush, right? And just have solar power, grow your own veggies and all that sort of stuff and still have a community and that. And, I've toyed with that idea, but, I quite like where we are now and the more luxurious kind of spot we're in, and I think that's a classic example, isn't it, of choosing the pain. So I'm choosing the pain. Hey, if this infrastructure goes down, then I've got to deal with it,
Yep.
Whereas if I was there on the coast, who cares?
If you're on the coast with a diesel generator and backups and this and that, you're not going to give a shit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But the annoyance of having to go live on the coast, set up all that shit. Like I'm the same as you. I think about all that and I'm like, oh, damn, I don't want to be doing all that,
Yeah, travel away from family,
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. So it's almost like every decision that we make in our lives, there is, as you said, a balance with it.
Mm-hmm.
I think the part that I really like about it, bringing it back to choosing the pain as a result of sort of ignoring something. One thing you helped me to become aware of was what the fact that I was self-medicating with crackers and cheese. And so my way to dissociate from at home was to go and put a movie on quite late at night. So the negative outcomes for me was that I was quite late to bed. So I was tired in the morning. I'd eat a second meal at night, which would be like, half a packet or a whole packet of crackers, cheese, pesto, hummus, whatever it was. And that had been sort of one of my kind of go-tos instead of, booze or drugs or whatever. That was just what I did, But I think that was one way that I felt kind of trying to cope with just the busy life and then having kids around and just as a man trying to juggle so much, having that me time at the end and just kind of going, holy crap, like I just need to chill out here. And so I was choosing that as a way to deal with that. And I know so many guys that I know will drink at night, some to excess, some to just normal or whatever. They'll watch something or what are some, not making that wrong, but when I became aware of that, I was like, actually, well, the pain for me is extra weight, lack of sleep, struggling to show up, and it's not necessarily the best for my health, eating processed carbs and fatty cheese every night, So I was choosing a lot of pain there. Now I'm aware of other options I can do. For example, I'm working on that now and it's working really well and I'm starting to adjust that and change that behavior. What are some examples though that you feel that your clients or you've experienced that can help people listening to that make better choices, for example, in that space, because I know a lot of guys are in the same thing. They're just like, I just need my space now. I want some time just to chill out and
well, having space is okay, right? So there's and again, and you said it, and this is really important. There's no wrong or right. If you take morality out of it in that sense, or good, bad, it's just, there's just outcomes. It's just, there's cause and effect. And if you look at, say, for example, what you were doing with, and I was the same, far out. I was drinking a bottle of red a night, 4 or 5 nights a week, sometimes even more than that. And I wouldn't get obliterated or anything. I could handle it, but it was my way of disassociating, self-medicating, so to speak, and dealing with being in a dynamic that I wasn't happy in, and a way to kind of quiet my mind and dumb me down and do all these things. So I totally get it. And at the time as well, when you're in it sometimes, like doing that, you don't, like the blind spots we talked about before, the awareness, like you're not aware. And I'll justify it to myself and say, I'm just having a couple of wines. I had, a big day, long day, have a couple of wines to unwind, whatever. And I would just say that to myself, and that was okay. So it wasn't till then there was enough pain that then you're like, hey, is this what I want to continue to choose? Is this? Because now I'm starting to see what's happening on the flip side. which was the chronic pain, the pain of not really loving myself, not feeling worthy enough, not clearing up and cleaning up the things that were actually taking me to that place in the first place. And so there's always the flip side. And so your cheese and crackers one, like if we just look at that, for example, drinking, or not drinking in your case, but eating cheese crackers and sitting up late, so the pain you're avoiding was whatever issue you didn't want to deal with, or even being in your own feelings and emotions, which a lot of people want to avoid. They don't want to be on their own.
Actually, that's it. Yeah, I think what I was avoiding or self-medicating was the frustration and the stress of a busy life with the kids. And like, I love them to pieces and I absolutely love hanging out with them, but it is like a massive shift and life change. And I'm the kind of person where I give as much as I can give generally, I'm kind of, I jump in and get shit done kind of guy, so it is quite exhausting. I don't just sit there and go, hey, mum, that's your job. Like I rock in and I help tidy up and I help play with the kids and I engage with them, but it's quite tiring. And it's high on my values, but I could easily be doing other stuff with my time. Like I see my neighbor going to the gym, every night, and I see the other guy waltzing around and their kids have grown up and left home. And if I must admit, I'm a little bit jealous when I see that as well. So I think, I think what I was avoiding was that feeling of frustration of actually around, like I'm kind of stuck. I love them, but I'm kind of not necessarily 100% enjoying this journey right now. What's going on? And there was this angst or frustration inside. And as you said, that's what I was avoiding. And self-medicating, kind of going, well, I'm not leaving. I'm here to stay. So buckle up, buddy. Put your big boy pants on. Eat your cheese and crackers and get on with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think I become aware that actually that is actually not the most. I become aware that that's not wrong because I was self-medicating in order to turn up the next day. But what's an alternative now that I could choose that might be more healthier, like going and, punching a boxing bag or popping grapes and, turning the TV off at 10 o'clock or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, what is a bit more of a powerful?
Well, so if you look at this, and you're talking about the actual activity you can do instead, what it really came down to for that situation is you going within. Again, it's looking in the mirror.
I agree. Yeah,
and it's been willing to face the shit that you don't want to face, and to feel the pain, feel the frustration, the angst, and own it. Was the key. Because here's the thing: a lot of us don't want to feel it, and we sure as don't want to own it
which is what I've just admitted. And there's a feeling of guilt around that. Like,
exactly.
Why do I feel like this? I shouldn't feel like this.
That's it.
And it's embarrassing to feel like that too.
Yeah.
Like, what will my friends think?
This is the key, man. This is the crux of it, Joel, is when there's guilt and shame wrapped around something like that, and it becomes our shadow. In other words, we don't want to address it. It's the part we hide away, and we don't even know we're hiding it away sometimes and not wanting to see it. That's where the answer lies. And so it's then going, okay, I'm going to choose the pain of looking in or looking in the mirror, facing myself, being honest with myself about what's really going on, and feeling whatever that feeling is that I've been avoiding, and owning that's where I am. But even though that's the tough part, and that's a big challenge and can be painful initially, it's fucking liberating. Once you do that, that's where the liberation comes from.
Well, it's like that courageous conversation with myself, and like now I'm sharing it online. Like I don't. There is no emotional guilt or anything around that now. I can now say, I'm human. I feel that. That's just me. That's where I'm at. But I love my kids and my family to pieces, and I do anything for them. But at times it's frustrating and exhausting.
Yeah. And it's okay to, it's okay to own
and it's
that,
okay.
Right? Like anyone that has kids. You go and say to them, like, oh, how do you enjoy having kids? If someone turned around and said, oh, I love having kids all the time. It's always amazing. Every day is a blessing. And I'm on top of the world all the time. It's like, what a load of shit, right? There's not one person that ultimately, if you chunk it up, they're going to go, yeah, of course it's a blessing to have kids and all that. But all have our challenging times and our tough ups and downs with children.
Yeah,
When
that's right.
people talk to me about kids and they say, you know, what's it like having a child? It's like I say it's like the biggest blessing and challenge all wrapped up in one little human being.
Yeah.
Because it is. So one of the things that makes you grow so much, and you start having, you know, really thinking outside of yourself and feeling outside of yourself. So yeah, so that's a really good example. That same with, like, if we look at this too, a lot of people say, oh, I don't have time to go to the gym, I don't have time to exercise, and it's never a time issue. It's a values or a priorities issue about what's important and what's not. And if you look at our bodies, our meat suits, as I like to call them, that we experience this life in, that we have to have, otherwise we don't get to live anymore. Well, you got to look after that thing. And look, for a long time, I didn't look after it that great. I did in some areas and not other areas. And then there's repercussions. There's pain that comes with that. And so if you don't look after that now, and you don't exercise, and you don't go to the gym or lift weights and create bone density and increase muscle mass, and as we get older, our testosterone drops. So therefore, you know, we become more frail, we atrophy, we get smaller, we don't have the same mobility and strength. Then your life is not going to look the same. You're going to have pain to deal with about not being as mobile, not being as strong, maybe getting aches and pains. Maybe if you're eating unhealthy and not exercising, you're going to end up with diabetes, or you're going to end up with some other chronic issue, fatty liver. Then you're going to put weight on, and then you're going to be dealing with like all sorts of pain and bullshit later that have come home to roost because you avoided the pain of going to the gym and chose the pleasure of eating some shit food instead. That's
100% agree with that. I've got a story on that and a bit of a question for you to kind of maybe extrapolate out what happens a little bit more. So I've been in and out of the gym, in and out of CrossFit and other things as well. And, you know, it been super fit, like insanely fit at some times in my life. And then other times like grossly overweight, you know, carrying like 18, 20 kilos of extra weight. And I'm only a small person, right? So that's a lot of weight for me, you know, extra weight. What I've started doing recently as a result of, I find it sort of naturally coming through, is getting back into a CrossFitting style. It's kind of it's like a CrossFit. It's not CrossFit, but a similar sort of style workout. And I've only been like literally twice. And this is kind of crazy. What was scaring me, I'm 43, was I was waking up with a sore back. And I felt like an old man, and I was waking up with pain. And, you know, I'm active around the house, you know, like tidying stuff, painting the deck, repainting parts of the house. And just, you know, like I live what I thought was an active lifestyle. But, mate, since I've been going twice, and I did like a full-on cardio circuit, the first one where I could hardly walk for 4 days afterwards. The second one was like a light weights workout. So my chest is like this is day 3. Like I woke up in pain last night. Like it's got so much healing and breakdown. And like, I even reckon I look a little bit different. The muscle memory must be kicking in, but I don't feel, I'm the aches and pains are gone. Like, what the heck's going on there? Like, tell us more about what's actually happening and the importance of as men in particular, and women, but to move and to have a little bit of resistance, like in that mid 40s, I think that's a huge point, you know?
Yeah, if you look at the cliches, you know, use it or lose it. We're an organism that is seeking to survive, and we will atrophy, break down stuff that's not being used. And it includes parts of our brain. It includes our nervous system. It includes our muscles, everything. So if we're not using it, it becomes redundant. Therefore, the body adapts. It says, well, this has not been used. I don't need this anymore. And so away it goes, because it's seeking the most efficient way to move forward. And so, you know, like some people as they get older as well are paranoid about losing their cognitive function. So they'll do crosswords or read a lot, right? Because I don't want to get dementia. I don't want to get Alzheimer's. So I'll make sure I do these things to activate and keep my brain going. Yeah. Same with going to the gym or going to yoga. And I think like yoga, stretching, mobility, which I I'm definitely not as on top of as I want to be at this point, and I do it, but not as frequently. That mobility is crucial too, because if you haven't got mobility and flexibility of your body, you just get stiffer and stiffer and stiffer as you go. And so if you look at all these kind of different outcomes, right? No stretching, no flexibility work means tighter, shorter muscles, locked up joints, and then postures changing. And then you extrapolate that out 10, 15, 20 years, you're not in a very good situation. Just the same as if you don't go and lift weights and keep the muscles strong and keep growth hormone activated and testosterone up, then you atrophy, and there you don't have the same strength in 10, 15, 20 years. You know, as you decline, you're going with the natural decline that you have, but then you're not assisting it either, because you're not doing anything to actually help maintain that muscle mass. And therefore you can't pick things up. You can't move the same. You can't do anything the same. So everything has a cause and effect and has a pain attached to it. Everything.
Yeah. So essentially you're saying if you're choosing your pain, so the pain is either going to the gym, the time commitment, the workout part, the shower,
the stress of it, the feeling uncomfortable, like shit, oh God, this is making me puff, oh, this is like painful, oh God, I could be sitting down having a coffee or eating a cake or whatever. Like it's not always easy going to the gym. Sometimes you don't feel like it, but I make sure I go. And if I just smash myself for 35 to 45 minutes, at least I've done it. And then you feel a heap better afterwards.
Yeah. But that's one side of the pain versus, or the other option is not going, but then the consequences, as you're saying, of getting stiff, not having the strength. For example, I've got an active 1-year-old turning 2, like he's getting flipping heavy now. Like, you know, like I want to be able to throw him around. Like the kids love, you know, my daughter runs up, holds my hands, runs up my body and does a flip. You know, she must be coming up 20 kilos. Like I'm not a very big guy, as you know, like, you know, I want to be strong to do that for the next 10 years. You know, maybe not when she's like blooming 15, but you know what I mean? Like for the little boy, you know? So,
here's the issue too with this
pain of going to the gym so that I can enjoy time with them versus not being an older guy and not being able to have strength to do that. Right.
Yeah, totally. And so looking at it now and reflecting on it now, you can see that when we extrapolate it out, right? But the issue for most of us is too, when we think about just the exercise thing as the challenge, right? As the pain, pleasure, avoiding the exercise, seeking pleasure instead of going to the gym and doing the exercise. Now, if someone has it high in their values and they absolutely fucking love it anyway, well, that's not pain for them. And if there is pain, it's a pain that they want to embrace because it's important to them, because it's already high on their priorities.
Yeah.
But the interesting one with this is, if we look at the exercise one specifically, is it's easy for people to avoid the pain and seek the pleasure in the short term because it's so immediate. The issue is that the pain that comes with the lack of that one, of the lack of exercise, is so long term. It's so chronic. It's such a long term outcome, and so it's really easy. Just I won't go this week. I won't go next week, and then that week turns into like a month, and that month turns into 3 months, 5. Next thing you're 5 years, 10 years, and you haven't done it. That's when the pain of those choices then start to kick in, like 10, 15 years down the track. And because we're so geared predominantly as short-term animals that just kind of see it in the short run, many people aren't thinking about it like that. And so therefore the choice they're making is not a well-balanced choice, taking all information into account, because it's just easier to focus on the short term.
100%. And you know, and then one of the I suppose we have to mention it because it's actually really interesting and really powerful as well, as I've got a couple of friends, good friends in particular, who have both told me excuse me, at separate times, how going regularly to the gym and doing some sort of cardio and light resistance, I mean, they're not bodybuilders, but they're just, you know, wanting to keep in shape, is the positive impact on their mental health and their ability just to feel, I don't know, grounded and happier.
Yeah.
I'm going to speak to that.
You get an endorphin release when you exercise, right? So, you know, your endorphins really make you feel good. And there's also, you know, there's a sense of accomplishment that you've accomplished something, you've done it. And so it's like a small win. And when you have a small win, you get to build on that small win.
Yeah.
and that creates momentum. That's why, it's people say, oh God, I'm back at the gym after 3 months off or 2 months off, and it's tough. But give it a week, give it 2 weeks. Next thing you're like, oh wow, this is feeling good again. It's feeling easy again, because the body goes into a bit of shock, initially. All the muscles are like, oh, what's happening? I haven't done this for a while. And so
Tell
it's
me
even
about it,
more
mate.
painful.
Tell me
It's
about
even
it.
more painful,
But it's
right?
actually quite, to your point, I don't know whether it's sadistic or not, but it's actually a really good feeling.
Yeah, we
Like
all
I
have a
like getting
sadistic
up
side
and
to us,
going,
Joel.
oh, that's
You can
painful. But
own that
actually,
sadistic side.
you're right about the feeling of accomplishment, because I
Yeah.
know something's happening. Like if my
Yeah.
muscles are sore, I'm like, well, I've obviously broken them down, so they're building or they're toning or whatever.
Yeah. And
Mm,
it's good you
mm,
bring that up, because I love that feeling of like,
mm.
sometimes you kind of stiff, or just you've got the DOMS, the delayed onset muscle soreness,
Yeah.
but it feels good because
Mm,
you've done something. You know that
mm,
you've worked your
mm,
body, and it's letting you know that it makes you feel alive, like you feel
mm.
alive in your body. And the more exercise you do, the more you associate into your body. It's a really good way to ground you into your body when you're doing something physical like that, and
Mm,
get us out of our heads. So
mm,
that's the other
mm,
great thing.
mm. Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Mm,
anyways, choose your pain, and in
yeah.
all areas, not just exercise, not just drinking,
Mm,
business, relationships, every aspect. There's
mm.
always going to be a balance. There's going to be two sides to the coin. It's going to be cause and effect,
Yeah.
and there's going to be a pain or a challenge, no matter which way you go.
Mm,
So it's way wiser to consciously choose the pain or the challenge
mm,
that you wish to
mm,
tackle, that you wish to have, so
mm,
that it empowers you, because you're
mm.
consciously choosing versus being unconsciously run by just seeking pleasure
100%.
and avoiding pain.
100%. That's a good
Yeah.
one. Ooh, it's a good one. Oh man, you're gonna get me started on the business sense, but yeah, I think
Yeah.
I think just to wrap up a little bit on that part with entrepreneurs, I think you look at entrepreneurs who find success and or different varying degrees of success, and what I mean by that is make money essentially, at all different levels. You can see that that old saying that they push through a challenge or they
Mm-hmm.
find a way over, under, through, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
Something pops up and they go, well, actually, that's a challenge, and I'm just gonna keep going. So they're choosing to face that at the time, the pain, where it could be very easy to go, oh, that didn't work,
Oh, totally.
something else.
Well, yeah. Look at
Yeah.
what we've done with this podcast we've launched.
Mm,
We've had to choose the pain of
mm,
like going
yeah.
through and choosing the logo and getting it right, and making sure that we were
Mm,
both cool with it, and making sure
yeah.
we were both okay with putting ourselves out there and dealing with the pain and the challenge of having some criticism and doing all
Mm,
that.
mm,
Or we could have just stayed doing what we're doing and avoid all that shit.
yeah.
And, and if you want to link it back to business, this is a good one too, or
Mm,
money
mm,
making.
yeah.
It is challenging to scale yourself out and
Mm,
make a lot of money. It's challenging, right? You've got, like you just said,
mm,
you've got challenges to overcome. You've got
mm,
pain to overcome
mm,
to do that.
yeah.
But on the flip side, you can avoid all that. You can
Mm,
avoid the challenge of making all the money and having to grow yourself and look in the mirror and push through your bullshit. You can avoid all that, and you
yeah.
can just stay comfortably where you are,
Yeah.
which also comes with pain, because then you
Yeah.
have less choices.
Mm,
Internally, you'll be beating yourself up potentially
mm,
that you
mm,
didn't go and do what you wished you had, or had your dreams and fulfill that.
mm, mm,
And then you lead a life of quiet suffering potentially,
mm,
or just the fact that you don't have as many choices because you don't have the money or
mm,
the time flexibility,
mm,
and you're at the
mm.
whim of someone else. Well, that's also fucking painful.
100%.
So
Yeah.
choose your pain. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
the realization I've had recently. It's like,
Wow.
well, I want choices. I
Yeah.
want flexibility.
Mm,
I want to put my hand on my heart and say I did what I
mm,
could to provide value to others, and
mm,
know that
mm,
I've lived that. And
mm,
so I now choose the pain of like stepping into that space and everything
mm,
else that
mm,
comes with it, because
mm.
it has both,
Oh,
versus just shrinking myself and
yeah,
then having the pain of that.
mate. Yeah, I got the goosebump moment. Holy moly. I think what I really just got now, and you highlighted so beautifully, was the fact that whether I choose to play small,
Yeah.
or whether I choose to play large, there
It's
is pain
painful.
and
Yeah.
ramifications of both choices. So why
Yeah.
not
A
play
hundred
large?
percent.
You know what I mean?
That's it.
Like, what's the point
That's
of
it.
playing small? because
Well, you
there's
can.
still pain. Yeah, but there's
totally
still
you can,
pain
but
there,
you're
and
still
there's
going to
still
have pain, baby.
so either
Yeah,
way, yeah.
totally.
Far out. That's like mind blowing. I never got that before. That's
No,
good.
all these nuances and that,
Mm,
as we grow and evolve, like
yeah.
some of that's just really hit me in the last 6 months.
Mm,
So,
mm,
again, the process of growth and evolution, it's a process, it's a journey.
mm,
And as long as we're here having a human experience,
yeah.
I've said this before, that is our process, that is our
Mm,
journey. And if you have
mm,
that fundamental belief that you've got to keep growing and evolving, and
yeah.
that challenges and pain's going to come anyway,
Yeah.
it's a much better, much more empowering way of looking at that
Mm,
and then staying committed so that you keep yourself on a trajectory going up and evolving versus
yeah.
shrinking yourself and dealing with that side of it.